Hi folks, Chris Pies here with another track walk for the PCA Sim Racing League. This week we're going to be tackling the ever-challenging Virginia International Raceway, or VIR, in the GT4 718 Club Sport MR and iRacing. First things first, as always, I will go ahead and play a lap that I did a little earlier and full without any interruptions. And then I will slow it down, come back to the start, and then take each turn by turn, and go over some of the details about how to get around VIR both quickly and safely. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and play the lap. So there we go. That was the lap of VIR. You have to excuse me. I am a little rusty in the GT4 car, but that particular lap time was a 1:56.378. And if you want to compare yourself to what my conditions were, it looks like about 97-degree track temp. We're running at 65-degree ambient at a noon time to get that temperature. So basically what the conditions are going to be for the Central Zone Group runoff challenge that we've got coming up in a couple of weeks here at this track. So I'm going to go ahead and rewind it to the beginning of this video and take a third-person chase cam view of the car and the track so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on and how to properly tackle VIR. So first up, a couple of things you need to know about VIR is it's a very technical track. This is not an easy track. There are 17 turn numbers, but that doesn't account for a lot of the turns that are in the Esses or the snake portion of the track. So it's more like a 20-turn course. It's very difficult to put a very good lap here consistently. Even on my lap, I did about 6 laps in prepping for this video. And every single lap, there was a little bit something I could have done better that I did better in a different lap. It's just really difficult to put together a lap time. So don't be discouraged if you can't just come in out here and start turning lap times within tenths of each other. It's one of the more difficult tracks iRacing has to offer. So coming up down the straightaway, it's the front straight. It's not actually a straightaway. It's actually got a little bit of a turn to the right all the way through, and right at start finish there's kind of a kink to this turn, and if you're not ready for it, or if you try to go too wide through it, you can find yourself running out of track very quickly. So just always remember, you've got to treat it like a turn. You've got to apex it properly in order to be perfectly safe. Since we're here, we can look at pit entry. Pit entry is pretty basic on this track. It's just a nice, simple, straight on in. There's no curve or anything leading into pit entry. Just make sure when you practice, you get a good marker for your brake point so you can maximize your speed going into pit lane. I believe when I use it, I use basically the triangle that is over here that designates the track and the pit entry lane. Right at the tip of that, right where it starts, is a great braking zone. You know, practice it, find out what works best for you, but I want to say that worked well for me. You may have to go a little deeper than that, or maybe a little bit earlier, but at least it's a good frame of reference to use as a brake marker. So we'll go ahead and go half speed like I tend to do this. So like I said, the straightaway is not really straight. It's straight for the first portion, but right at start finish, we've got another kink. And if you notice, it's also blind. Can't see where the track is going. So we need to make sure that when we're coming into it, we're prepared for this little kink going through. If you're on the outside, you've got someone on the inside, and you go through that kink and you're not ready for it, you can easily end up in the grass. So coming up into the braking zone for turn 1, it is a very tight decreasing radius corner. If you notice in the brake zone, the track goes flat for a little bit and then it actually falls away from you and dips down before it flattens out again. We want to make sure that our braking zone is on the flat top and not on the slope that goes down, because that's going to hamper our initial bite into the brake zone. I tend to use the 4 marker, forward on the left, as my brake zone, my initial brake point, and I hit the brakes pretty darn hard here in practice. This is the second place on the entire track that I brake the hardest. So we go all the way to the forward, boom. I've hit the brakes just before the forward, because at the forward, the track does fall away from you, so you want to make sure, like I said, brake on the flat surface before the track falls away so you can get the maximum amount of initial bite. And then we are riding this brake all the way down into the turn. So I am, if you look at my brakes, I'm hitting as hard as I possibly can effectively. The turn before the actual turn in point, you're going uphill into the corner, so you'll get a little bit extra bite from the brakes at the very end, and it'll also help with your turn in. So we just need to make sure that we can properly set ourselves up by being on the left side of the track for this decreasing radius turn. I believe my turn-in point's going to be somewhere between the one board and the arrow here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to late apex this corner as best as possible. So we want to delay our turn-in as long as possible. So I'm waiting. So I actually start turning in just before the arrow board at the very end here. As I'm turning in, as you can see with my inputs down here, I'm trailing off the brake. So as I turn in, I'm bleeding brake off, so I can use the tires to grip around the corner. Now, if I do the corner right, my goal is to basically start accelerating this car and complete my turn point where the curbing ends. So basically where the grass and this curbing meet down here on the corner. That's my goal. Can't always do it, but at least it's something to try to work towards. So at this point, you can tell, if we look at this, I'm coasting a little bit of extra brake, but right here, coming right to my point, like I said, I'm starting to feed on throttle at this point to try to settle the rear of the car and rotate around the corner. You have to be careful right around here. Just after you started accelerating, there is a pretty nasty bump in the track, and it will unsettle your car if you're full throttle through there. So sometimes you have to give it a little bit of lift, let the car settle, and then get back on it. That bump will help rotate the car a little bit, and what the goal is to try to get the car back turned in for the second half of the horseshoe, which is where this curbing starts again. We want to be as close to it as we can. That's the fast way around this. So there we go. I'm full throttle. I've already got the car pointed in the right direction. Apex on the curbing, and now we're coming up into what's called NASCAR bend or turn 3. Now, NASCAR is a little bit, it's probably one of the sketchier corners on the track. Your entry is, if you're feeling good and your tires are nice and warm, your entry is full speed, but you need to be able to scrub speed and turn at the same time. There's not really a straight braking zone that you can do effectively over and over and over again. So you've got to know how to balance the car and trade off braking power for turning power going through NASCAR. So I'll show you what I mean. Coming through, we want to be track right as best as possible, apex at the curbing, And what we're going to try to do is try to create a straight line as we can between this point and this this little hut, this red hut that's in the middle red building. It looks like a little barn here. If that's our straight line for our initial braking, but we can only do it for a little bit because then we're going to run out of track, but we still need to turn to the left. So if you look at my brake points all throughout this track, or all throughout this corner, I've got brake, I've got steering. There's a lot going on with it, and you just have to. There's no easy way to do it, but you just have to do this corner over and over and over, and realize that it's like a big arc. It's like one big corner that starts where the car is now and doesn't end until you're through turn 3. So I'm braking a straight line to scrub some speed. I'm off the brakes to be able to turn, and I've actually finished my braking at this point for my final turn in. The goal for turn 3 is to get as close to this apex curbing as you can. Ideally, we don't want to get on it because it will bump our car up and really mess with the weight transfer and the balance of the car. But if you do get up on it, it's not that big a deal. You're just going to have to be a little patient while the car settles on the back end. I think on this run, I do get up on the curbing a little bit, maybe. Actually, no, I did it perfect. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to, like I said, put your wheels right up on it. You don't want to get on it if you can help, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. Coming through turn 3, the closer you can get to this curbing on the right, the better. But be forewarned, if you go over the curbing and you drop wheels on the grass, you're going to spin. The only way to save this car through turn 3, if you go a little wide, is you have to straighten up the wheel as fast as possible and basically start slowly getting out of the gas. You need to focus on saving the car and driving in a straight line and bringing the car back on safely. Because if you try to save it after you've touched the grass, you're going to J-hook it or spin it either right or left through here. So it's better to obviously stay on track. It's easy to say, but you know, err on the side of caution by keeping on the track and not getting on the curbing rather than using all the curbing, getting that extra mile an hour and risking touching the grass. So coming up into turn 4, which is also called left hook, not a really good brake marker. I'll actually back it up a little bit. I'm just using the feel of the car. I don't really have a brake marker here. So it's after the last curbing here, plus a little bit. We're in 3rd gear, and we're going to do a pretty firm brake coming into this corner. When you hit the brake, so it's about halfway between that curbing and when you can kind of start to see the curbing on the left, you're going to brake in a straight line, downshift to 2nd gear, and we're going to try to keep it as tight as possible and pinch this corner, which means we're going to try to exit on track left. We're not going to track all the way out to set up for the right-hander, which will lead up into snake. So coming down, braking in, staying on the brakes, using the mid-engine rotation of this car. It's okay to get up on this curb to help rotate the car. And then we don't want to go past mid-track on the way out because we need to set up for the right-hander. So there we go. There's a nice line seam right in the middle that we want to kind of act as the end of our track. And then once we get the car straight, we can start turning into the right here. You can get all up on this curb. What I actually like to do is I actually like to short shift into 2nd normally coming through here, or into 3rd, sorry. So we've gone through 2nd through the corner, got a little burst of speed in 2nd gear, and then right before we turn in, grab 3rd gear. So we don't have quite as many revs in the car. We can keep it nice and balanced. Use all this curbing. We'll have to do a little lift mid-curbing, as you can see, because the car is going to get a little bit jostled, and we don't want to be full throttle all the way through here. So just a little bit of a lift. But then once the car settles, bam, we're back on full throttle. And then we just treat this next little complex, which is turn 5 and turn 5A, kind of as one big corner, one big arc. So we've come in, we've turned into the right, we've short shifted, and we're going to let the car run all the way as close to this curbing as we can to set up for the second part, which leads into the S's. So nice and wide, treat it like a double apex, one solid corner. Let the car is going to run all the way to track left. Get as close as you can with obviously not hitting the grass, and then turn in. Do a little bit of lift on your turn in to help get the nose of the car turned in properly. We can use this curbing and then let it track out. Again, we can use this curbing on the left side as well. You can touch the dirt, but it does run a little bit risky. You don't want to touch this dirt with any steering angle. If you're going to go through it, make sure your steering is perfectly straight. And then at this point, we're full throttle through the S's, and the GT4, absolutely no problem all the way through. So we'll run it up through the gears, coming into the first part of the S's, which are going to be up the hill. And the thing about the S's is you need to work up to them. They are very fast. You can, in this car, take them flat out with the exception of the very last S, which will be turn 9 going up the hill. But everything else can be flat out, but you have to take a lot of curbing, and the car is going to bump around when you do it. So basically the rule of thumb here is when you hit the curbing, you want your steering wheel to be straight. And then when you land, you also want your steering wheel to be straight, but not until the car settles can you start giving it any input. And the only way we can do that is we need to make the S's as straight as possible. So what I mean by that, you'll see when you come into the first S, what we're trying to do is we're trying to draw a straight line from this curbing to the next curbing to the next curbing to the final curbing. So the straighter the line, the faster we can go through here. If we follow the curve of the track, we're going to have to constantly get out of the throttle to keep the car under us, and it's going to bleed time. So the way we do that is we get up on the first curbing and get a little bit to the left to try to create that straight line through the second and third corners. So you can see me, I've followed the curbing a little bit. I've turned in here. And then right here, this is the curbing that you take a ton of. You can actually get your right wheels up on the grass where these little marks are. In fact, I think these were from where I was earlier in the first few laps. So we'll jump up on the curbing, and you can see I've still got 2 wheels inside the white line, so I'm still not getting a 1X here. But if you look at my right tire, I am in the grass effectively, and I am just basically throwing the car over the curbing, letting it land on the back end, and trying to keep it straight to go through the final part. I do a little lift in this particular section right here. You can take it flat out, but not until you're really comfortable with it. And it's better to be a little bit wary and do a tiny toe lift than, coming in too hot and just losing it all and crashing into the barrier. So a little bit of a toe lift for me here, and then I'll get right back on it. And then coming up, and this is the turn 9 section, this is the one that is not flat. You'll have to do a little drag of the brake. Try to keep it tucked in as best as possible. We don't want to drift more than half track because we need to go left soon. So we come up over the hill into turn 10, and turn 10 is deceptive. Everything runs away from you on turn 10. It is quicker than you think in the sense that if you use the curbing on the left, you can go a lot faster than you would think. So what you want to do is you want to get the car all the way to track right, scrub some speed, but get the car turned in, and when you know that you're going to hit the curbing on the left, you can get on the throttle. This is a 4th gear turn, and the whole goal here is to try to get to throttle early to start carrying the speed through the corner. You don't want to be braking mid-corner because you're going to be slowing down when you could technically be accelerating. So you'll see what I mean here. I don't think I did it very well in this particular example, but we're scrubbing the brakes coming into the turn, using all of the track. We're starting to turn in. I'm starting to bleed my brake off, so I've already started trail braking from way back here. I am actually off the brakes here at this point, and the whole goal is to try to start to feed on throttle. Now, you can see in this example, I've missed my apex by a good 6 inches or so. Ideally, what I want to do is I want to have my left wheels up on this curb as much as possible, but the angle that I'm taking, I'm not going to hit that. So if we go forward a little bit, so I had to actually dab the brakes a little bit more about right here, when theoretically the fast way through here is I'm already on throttle because I'm up on the curb. I'm using all of the track. You can see how much of the track I'm losing here because I missed my turn in point. And then the idea is that we're accelerating through the corner. So if we're in this position and we're still on the brakes in any fashion, that means we went in too fast. We need to slow the car down more going into the corner. And then the only other thing is when you come through here, if you get up on this curbing, your wheel is straight. This curbing is notorious for hopping this car up in the air a little and really causing some weird reactions to the car under power, and you can very easily lose it by touching this curbing under power in the GT4. Coming up into Oak Tree, we want to get over to track left. What I'm looking for is I'm looking to brake somewhere between the 3 and the 2 board. We're going uphill, so we're going to brake really quickly, but it goes uphill and then it flattens out. So you'll have a good initial bite, good initial deceleration, but then once you cross the 2 board, that same amount of braking is not going to slow you down to the same extent. So there's a lot of examples where people brake too late into this corner. You know, they brake up the hill and they say, wow, I can brake really hard, really late. I'll just keep walking it further and further. But the problem is the track flattens out and your braking force and braking ability just disappears after the two board. So you're going to get that first really good initial bite, but then it's just going to trail off. The goal behind Oak Tree is what we're trying to do is we're trying to slow the car down to the extent that we can keep the momentum of the car. So right before the Oak Tree turn, we're going to get our momentum is going to carry us all the way to track left, and we can take a nice wide turn and get on the accelerator as early as we can coming out of Oak Tree. So like I said, brake between 3 and 2, just after the 3 board, use a little bit of the hill, and then you'll actually see my brakes. I start to come off of them, because what's happened is that when I brake where I broke, I will slow the car down way too much if I stayed on that brake, and I'll go too slow through the corner. So I'm actually getting rid of some brake to let the momentum of the car carry through, and I actually get off the brakes fully at one point when I'm turning in. And then I'm off the brakes here completely because I realize, all right, I've kind of overslowed the car. I need to have the momentum, but there's no point in accelerating because I'm going to have to brake again here real soon. So coasting a little bit through here, trying to get the car pointed, and now I'm on the final part of Oak Tree. And this is the turn that really matters. The first part is just to slow the car down to set up for this. And then what you're trying to do is basically treat it like one big arc. It's a really, really tight turn. And we want to get the car as far left as we can. In fact, I could have gotten a little bit farther left. And the whole goal here is to get on the throttle as early as we can to try to carry the speed all the way down the front straight, or the back straight. So here we go. I have a little bit extra dab of the brake to try to get the nose tucked in properly. But then right here, you can see I'm actually not even at apex, and I'm already starting to bleed, or I'm starting to feed on the throttle. At apex, I'm at half power, so I'm a little bit more than maintenance throttle at this point. And then when I land, I'm full throttle, carrying my speed down the straightaway. Do what you can to avoid getting in this dirt. I touched it a little bit and probably lost a tenth going through there. And then we're just running down the back straight. This is a great opportunity to, unclench your fists and relax a little bit. Look in your mirrors, check your dials, all that fun stuff. There's nothing other than it poses a great opportunity to draft somebody and make a move coming through or coming down the back straight and leading up into roller coaster. But other than that, it's just one of the longer straights in racing, frankly. So coming down the straightaway, what we're looking for is this dirt patch down in the distance. And you've got your board numbers over here, of course, which, they're telegraphing that a turn is coming up. But this dirt patch is really a good indicator of where your brake zone. It's nice and clear. It's always there in sim. So that's what I tend to use. Ideally, we want to brake between the 1 board and the final arrow board. The later, the better, because the braking zone is all uphill. So gravity is going to be helping us. We're going to get a lot of ability out of our brakes to slow this car down. This will be the hardest braking zone in the entire track. So coming down in here, we're going up through 6th gear. And then boom, just after the 1 board is where I'm braking going up the hill. And what we want to try to do for this complex is a little bit of a left kink that leads into a pretty tight right-hander and then comes down into the left-hander. So the goal here is we want to get the car up near this curbing on the left under braking, but you have to understand that we have to brake all the way up until we trail brake into the right-hander. So the braking zone is quite long despite the fact that we're going uphill, and we have to modulate the brakes to be able to continue to turn while braking. If we're 100% brake force going through this corner, we're not going to be able to turn. So there's periods where you have to kind of bleed off the brake, get back on the brake, and then bleed off of it again. And you can see that in my telemetry trace down here. So firm brake, I'm bleeding off of it so I can turn in a little bit, and then I'm back on it a little bit more to slow it down, and then I bleed off of it again for my final turn in to go around the right-hander. Now, in this instance, in this example, I actually carry a little bit more speed than I'd like, maybe 2 miles an hour faster than I would like, because I had to keep slowing the car down around the corner. Ideally, we want to have the car already slowed down when I'm about at apex so we can start accelerating. I have to carry it a little bit further. So you can see right here, I would already be on the accelerator and I would be further to the right if it was ideal. But again, Virginia is really just, VIR is just really hard to put a whole lap together consistently. But I cleaned it up, realized that I'm going to make the corner, so I'm back on the throttle. And then we immediately get fed into a left-hander going downhill. Now, if you do the first part, that first right-hander properly, you probably can take the second one flat out or almost flat out. But because I ended up further left than I wanted to, I'm having to wait a little bit before I can go to full throttle and get the car pointed in the right direction, and then I can get on full throttle. This will be third gear coming through here. And the idea here is the momentum of the car will carry us all the way over to the curbing on the right. And then right when we turn in here, we're going to dab the brakes a little bit. We're just trying to scrub a little bit speed coming into what's called Hog Pin, which is this right-hander down here. Really fun part of the track, but really difficult to get it right. So scrub a little bit of speed, take all the curbing on the left that you can. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to set up for the right-hander. And as soon as we land from hitting that curbing, we're going to hopefully be on the left side of the track to set up for the right-hander. And we're going to get back on the brakes relatively firmly, go all the way down to about halfway brake, and then immediately start bleeding it off. And the goal is to just basically get a little bit more speed out of the car and help settle the nose to get it turned in for the hog pin turn. And for hog pin, what you want to do is you want to get up on this curb on the right. The car is going to kind of jump and then it'll settle. And when it settles, you can be back on full throttle all the way through the last two turns. So here we are. I've turned in, missed the curbing a little bit, but then the car will settle. Everything will compress because you're coming downhill. And when it compresses, boom, full throttle. The car may try to wiggle on you a little bit, but it's still controllable through here. Use all of the track, and then you're back on the front straight, coming back to start finish. And that's a lap of VIR. Like I said, this is a very, very technical track. It's very fast. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. It takes a lot of laps here to really start to get comfortable with this track. But in my opinion, it's one of the better tracks in iRacing and frankly in America. If you've never been here before, I actually went here for the first time this past year in real life, and I drove a GT4. And it's also, that video is on my YouTube channel, and it is just one of the most, frankly, if you're a race car driver, it is one of the most magical places, like Disneyland. I mean, the place is completely manicured. It looks like it does here in iRacing. iRacing did a fabulous job recreating it. All the grass is manicured. It's basically like a country club, like a golf course country club, but for racing. So anyway, that's VIR. I hope this provides some sort of insight. For those of you that are driving the 911 Cup car, the line is going to be similar. The speeds are going to be faster, but your brake points are going to be in a very similar place because while the Cup car can brake better than the GT4 car, your speeds are faster, so you have to brake earlier anyway. So yeah, a lot of the same ideas going through it in the Cup car. Not a whole lot changes. So best of luck. Hope to see all of you guys out there for the next Central ZRC zone races. This will be number 4 on the 5 race calendar that we've got. And yeah, if you have any questions, just message me on Discord and I'll be happy to help out. Thanks again. This is Chris Pies with PCA Sim Racing. Thank you.